Okay, we got this here. We got this. We got that. Okay. All right. Think I remember how to do this. John Tavares is a Leaf. No, wait, that's Steve Dangle. What is going on, guys? No, that's Trendkill. He hasn't made videos in like 10 years. Which one am I? No. I remember which one I am, and I wouldn't want to let my legions of fans down by being anybody other than me. What's happening, everybody? Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, and say it with me, folks. The CFL is back. Welcome to week 1 of my weekly CFL football picks show for the 2021 CFL season, a 14-game regular season, which gets started on Thursday with a Grey Cup rematch from 2019. This is season 3 of this CFL football pick show, and I am so excited, and I'd be more excited if Vegas weren't a bunch of cowards. I will give you 3 guesses, and 2 of them don't count, at how many games in week 1 in the CFL actually have betting lines associated with them. The answer is 0, because Vegas is a bunch of cowards. I understand, and I've been saying this for years, but I understand that it's been almost 2 years since this league played a game. That's why I might be a little rusty at this for a week or 2. It's been almost 2 years. There's been a lot of turnover with these teams. I understand that there's so much uncertainty here. And I understand that the Vegas bookmakers exist to make money. But we're less than like 50 hours to the kickoff of the season, and week 1 games don't have betting lines yet? It's ridiculous. It's awful. And based on this tweet thread, I know at least one person in the industry agrees with me. Shout out Davis Sanchez. Look, if you've watched my CFL show before, you kind of understand what the format's going to be. We'll talk a little bit about each game, have the picks towards the end of the video. But now for a second straight season, I am also taking part in weekly fantasy sports for CFL. This is just right through CFL's official fantasy sports game. You can sign up for that right on CFL.ca. There's a link in the top right-hand corner to do so. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoy it. I highly encourage you to sign up for the CFL fantasy game, especially if you're good at like daily and weekly fantasy sports. It's a lot of fun. So once again, I'm in the official Atlantic Schooners CFL Fantasy group. There are still only 75 people in that group, so we're hoping to build numbers on that. And I'm going to share with you my week 1 daily fantasy sports lineup for CFL Fantasy. At quarterback, I'm going to be going with Trevor Harris. Running backs, James Wilder Jr. and Sean Thomas Erlington. Greg Ellingson and Dominique Rhymes are going to be my wide receivers. I've got Johnny Augustine at my flex position with the news that Andrew Harris is likely not playing in week 1 for the Bombers. And we're going to go with the Elks defense because I don't see how Ottawa's offense, which was the worst in the league in 2019, has improved itself very much. So you play CFL Fantasy the same way you would play daily fantasy sports through, say, DraftKings or FanDuel or anything like that. You have a budget, a salary cap. You got to keep your choices within that salary cap. Obviously, your quarterbacks and your very high-end players are going to be the most expensive. So when you want to use them, you got to make sure that you're building the rest of your team around that. I think I'm starting with a solid lineup here, stacking a bunch of Edmonton Elks players. So let's get to week 1. Our lineup of games does not include the Montreal Alouettes. They get the very unfriendly bye in week 1, which means they're only going to have one more bye week between now and the end of the season in week 16. So that's a bit of a stretch that CFL teams are not necessarily used to. Be interesting to see how that affects the Alouettes down the stretch. But here in week 1, we've got Hamilton traveling to Winnipeg to take on the Blue Bombers, rematch of the previous Grey Cup. We've got the BC Lions in Saskatchewan to take on the Roughriders. We have got the Toronto Argonauts in Calgary to take on Bo Levi Mitchell and the Stamps. And we've got the Ottawa REDBLACKS in Edmonton to take on the newly named Edmonton Elks. Just before we get started, again, as I pointed out, look, this league hasn't played in almost 2 years. There's been a ton of player movement that's taken place in the last 2 years. I've provided a couple of links in the description below that you can go to, and you can see full lists of player movements. You can break it down by team. You can see which players have gone where. If you're somewhat familiar with the CFL and its players and the structure of its league, you'll understand that this is seismic amounts of player movement. You had retirements, Solomon Elimimian, who has been a staple in this league. You can catch up on all that information if you've been missing out on it at the links that I've provided in the description below, should you need to. And of course, even though I'll be plugging them later, of course I'm fueled by nerd teas. Come on, what are you talking about? Who do you take me for? So we're going to start right at the top. Rematch of the Grey Cup from 2 years ago. The Hamilton Tiger Cats traveling to Winnipeg to take on the Blue Bombers. Now from 2019, the Ticats 15-3. They were 6-3 away from home that season. 8-2 against opponents from the West Division. Scored 551 points. Only gave up 344. They were the number 1 seed in the East Division. Heading into the playoffs, of course, went all the way to the Grey Cup, where they did lose that Grey Cup matchup to these Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And before we go any further, I want to point out, I'll be referencing stuff that happened in 2019, but I'm not using what happened in 2019 as any kind of basis, really, for making my predictions this year, because it might as well be like it didn't happen. So much has changed. Players have gotten 2 years older across the board. So I'm not really going to be using like, well, this team only gave up this number of points 2 years ago, and that means this. No, it means absolutely nothing. It's history. It's kaput. It doesn't mean anything, has no bearing on the 2021 season. But what I am going to be doing is taking a moment when I talk about each and every team to say what I like about them. And even the worst teams in this league have things to like about them. When you talk about Hamilton, what I like about them, they got a top 5 quarterback in this league easily in Jeremiah Masoli. Some people would make the argument that he's top 3. Some people make the argument that he's the best quarterback in the league. I don't particularly agree with that. He's top 5 easy. He might push top 3, but for me, it's a little borderline. But look, they've got a really good quarterback. They've got a diverse offense. They've got great top-end offensive weapons, including, of course, Brandon Banks, who they are rolling back again. He's easily the best wide receiver in this entire league, a game-breaking type of offensive player. Hamilton is still bringing not only those top-end players, but the depth on the offensive side. That has not gone anywhere. As far as I'm concerned, the Ticats have an elite pass rush as well as an elite secondary. They're going to be able to pressure the quarterback. They're going to be able to pressure the quarterback into making bad throws, and the secondary is good enough that they're going to be able to take advantage of that. That's what I really like about this Ticats team. Now, they do have some injury concerns that they are watching, specifically on the offensive side of the ball. A pair of wide receivers, Davier Posey, who's, of course, a former Grey Cup MVP. He is out definitely in week 1. And Braylon Addison, who is a tremendous compliment to Brandon Banks at that number 1 spot. He also did not participate in practice both Sunday and Monday. We're waiting on an update for Braylon Addison. I would say it's probably leaning a little bit closer to him not playing. I'm recording this on Tuesday, so we'll have to see what happened in practice today as well as tomorrow. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers are coming off of a 2019 campaign that saw them go 11-7 in the regular season, 8-1 at home. Very difficult team to beat in Winnipeg. They were only even money, however, against the East Division. Of course, this is a West versus East matchup. They were only 4-4 that year against the East. They scored 508 points. They gave up 409, still solidly in the plus side. They were the number 3 team in the West Division. So this was not the best team in the West or even the second best team in the West, but they did go all the way to win the Grey Cup, beating Hamilton in the Grey Cup final. What I like about the Bombers might be a little bit less than a lot of people are expecting. I think this Bombers team has an elite offensive line. I think they're one of the best 2 or 3 O-lines in the CFL this year, and they've still got Andrew Harris. They may not have him for week 1, but over the course of this season, this shortened 14-game season, they've still got the most game-breaking player aside from Brandon Banks in this entire league in Andrew Harris. He is going to definitively change games and can take over games, is going to win a lot of games for Winnipeg. But kind of like the Ticats, the Bombers have some injuries that they're looking out for. Obviously, Andrew Harris did not participate in practice on Monday, I believe it was. Neither did wide receiver Darvin Adams, and he is a key piece of their offense. They've got multiple injuries they're watching on both sides of the football, offensively and defensively. Just doesn't bode very well for going into a matchup against Hamilton. Ladies and gentlemen, Grey Cup rematches are always entertaining, and this game will certainly live up to that entertaining aspect. I think this game is going to be a different story than we saw back in 2019. Obviously, all these games are, but the context of this game obviously is very different. If you don't have an Andrew Harris, if you don't have a Braylon Addison, I think things are going to go differently here. Hamilton's just got more. Hamilton's got more weapons. They've got a greater depth of weapons. Their high-end weapons are better, and the biggest one is actually playing where one doesn't look like they will be. I got to take the Ticats here. Even though the game is in Winnipeg, let's take Hamilton over the Bombers. Again, I don't think the Bombers are as good as other people are expecting them to be, especially if Andrew Harris isn't out there. Now, of course, as I mentioned, there are no spread numbers, there are no totals numbers, so basically I'm just going to go with my instinct on this, and of course I will update in the comments section below of this episode when the actual numbers and lines are released. That is what I will hold myself to, but as I'm sitting here right now, I expect Hamilton to be a road favorite in this game. It might not be by a ton, but I'll be laying the points with the Ticats pretty well anything up to a touchdown. If they're like -6.5 or better, I'll probably be laying the points on the Ticats here. Obviously, if you get some ridiculous number, you got to look at Winnipeg because they play very well in front of their own fans in their own buildings, but I'll be laying the points with the Ticats pretty well anything up to a touchdown. I expect this game to finish Hamilton 30, Winnipeg 23. So you're looking at like a low to mid 50 in the number there as well. So if you get a high 50, I think you stick under on it. But if somehow you get a 40 or a really low 50, consider the over. Next game has us traveling to Saskatchewan in front of the 13th man, probably the most rabid CFL fans that you can find anywhere belong to the Saskatchewan Roughriders. They're going to be at home taking on the BC Lions. Now, the BC Lions were a disappointment would be an understatement in 2019. They finished just 5-13 on the season, only 2-7 away from their own building, and they did not have a win in 2019 against a West Division opponent. They were 0-10 against the West Division in 2019. All kinds of bad. Scored 411 points, gave up 452, and obviously missed the playoffs. Now, what I like about the BC Lions right now, they've made the changes, I think, that were the most critical to them. Obviously, they've got a top 3 quarterback in Michael Riley. He's going to be a perpetual top 3 quarterback, I would say, in this league, as long as he's there. A diverse offense. They've got weapons, and they've got multiple weapons. And Mike Riley can spread the ball around with the best of them in this league, and that is really key to offensive success in the CFL. They also have a diverse defense, and this defense has something to prove. They gave up more points than they were able to score with Mike Riley at quarterback in 2019. This is a defense that's got something to prove. I think the defense is probably a little bit better than some people are giving it credit for. It is worth monitoring that Mike Riley was limited in practice on Monday. He didn't miss practice, but was limited. That's obviously a situation worth monitoring heading into this game. I would expect him to play. I don't think his availability for week 1 is being questioned or challenged at this point, but it's a situation to keep an eye on for sure. Saskatchewan is coming into this year off of a 2019 season that saw them win 13 games in 18 tries. They were 8-1 in front of their own home crowd in 2019, which is significant. They also won 7 of their 10 games against West Division opponents in 2019. Scored 487 points, only gave up 386. This was a good defense a couple years ago that is missing some key pieces now. They were the number 1 seed in the West Division, but did lose to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in the West Final on the Bombers' run to the Grey Cup. What I like about the Riders here is they've got top-end offensive talent. William Powell at running back. Kyron Moore, I think, is arguably a top 15 wide receiver in this league. He might even be pushing top 10. I really like Kyron Moore, and he's a good follow on Twitter as well. They also have a well-balanced defense, despite the losses of big names like Charleston Hughes, who went elsewhere. They still have a balanced defense. They've got a balanced pass rush. good tackling, a balanced secondary. This is still a defense that is capable of winning football games. Again, what it's going to come down to for Saskatchewan this year is those losses in free agency and how big were they truly. They've got a really good quarterback in Cody Fajardo. I don't necessarily know that he's a top 5 quarterback in this league yet, but there are a lot of people that certainly think that he is, and he's in fact a potential front runner for most outstanding player, which we're going to look at in a little bit here as well. But those losses in free agency are going to test this team big time. The West Division is bloodthirsty. It's got the best teams in this league. Let's see if the Riders can still keep up. This is obviously a game that the Riders cannot take lightly. They can't look at BC and go, they only won 5 games a couple years ago. This team, with Mike Riley, but certainly not ending at Mike Riley, is able to win on all levels, offensively, defensively, special teams. This team can surprise, so the Riders cannot take this game lightly to start the year. I do think Sasky winds up getting the win here. Again, you're still looking at a BC team that has struggled historically on the road, and a 2-7 team from 2 years ago doesn't magically become a very good road team that's necessarily capable of beating a team like Saskatchewan right out of the gate. So I'm going to take the Riders to win this game. However, I do believe that the spread on this is going to be too big. Again, I acknowledge the 13th man is definitely a thing, but I'm expecting this number to be around a touchdown, if not a little bit more. If you get like a 7 points or 7.5 on the spread, I think you grab the Lions here. I think this game is going to be closer than a lot of people expect. I'm personally grabbing the Lions at +7 and up. So if you're anywhere in there, I'm going to take the points with the Lions. I expect this game to finish Riders 30, BC 24. So once again, you're looking at that low to mid 50 on a number for a total. But if you get a big spread, I think you grab the dogs in this one. I will take the opportunity now at the midway point of the previews for week 1 to once again plug and shout out my tremendous friends and sponsors at Nerd Tees. I understand this is a Tim Hortons mug, but there's plenty of goodness, not from them, inside this cup, and that is from Nerd Tees. Nerdtees.ca. Use that promo code BWFinest. That is going to save you 15% at checkout, and you're going to be able to get free shipping in Canada on any order over $100, which is a really good deal because there's just so much to love about the Nerd Tees, folks. Today's blend is Kiwilicious, and it is very, very hot because it is in an insulated mug, and maybe that was a poor choice. I think I'm just going to go ahead and pop the top off of that bad boy lest I kill myself with being overheated. It just tastes so damn good. Smells so damn good too, because what I did was used my nose. Nerdtees.ca, promo code BWFinest, save your 15%, get your free shipping over $100, find yourself something to love, or find someone you love something to love. You can do it on Nerdtees.ca. Now back to the games. We head to Calgary now, where the Stampeders are going to play host to the Toronto Argonauts in what looks, on paper, certainly if you follow what happened in 2019, like arguably the biggest mismatch of the week. But hold on. The Argos are coming off of a dismal 4-14 record in 2019, only 1-8 on the road, so obviously very tough to try to go into a place like Calgary and win under the best of circumstances, but they certainly struggled away from Toronto last year. They also struggled against the West Division, winning only 1 of their 10 games against the West. They only scored 373 points last season, which would have been worst in the league were it not for a team we'll talk about in a few minutes. They also gave up 562, which was pretty well the worst in the league. Obviously, the Argos missed the playoffs. But like I said, with every team, there is plenty to like. What I like about the Argos, they have an underrated quarterback in McLeod Bethel-Thompson. I think you can start the McLeod Bethel-Thompson as a top 5 quarterback in the CFL conversation. I think that conversation, if it's not already started, is certainly worth starting. I think this guy might be one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the entire league. Obviously very active in free agency. They drew in people on both sides of the football, offensively and defensively. This team can't help but improve. The question will be, how quickly do they gel? And being as active in free agency as they were means one thing, and one thing specifically, that more eyes will be on the Toronto Argos than have been on them in years. So now with the firm raising of expectations, now the matzo balls are out there. So now it's time for Toronto to either put up or shut up. Calgary Stampeders were 12-6 in 2019 in the CFL, 7-2 in their own building, but only even money against the East Division at 4-4. So they did kind of struggle against East teams 2 years ago. Scored 482 points, gave up 407. They were the number 2 seed in the West Division in the playoffs, losing to Winnipeg, however, in the first round, that being the West semifinals. What I like about Calgary is what I've liked about Calgary for a number of seasons now. Top 3 quarterback in the league easily when he's on his game is Bo Levi Mitchell. They've got elite tacklers, elite secondary. They are lacking a little bit of a pass rush, but along the line of scrimmage, they have one of the top 2 or 3 offensive lines in the CFL. So there's a lot to like about this Calgary team. But it seems like every year we start having the conversation of, like, has the West passed Calgary by? Because the West teams are so good and so much talent in the West Division. It seems like every year we talk about, well, you know, boy, Calgary's really going to fall off this year. But I can't help but wonder if after a season where they only won 2 out of every 3 games and lost in the first round of the playoffs, I wonder if we are finally actually seeing the CFL equivalent of the last ride. For the Toronto Argos, walk before you run kind of thing. I don't expect Toronto to come out and beat Calgary in week 1. I think that is a huge, I think alarms will have to go off in Calgary if the Stamps lose that first game in their own building against a team that a couple years ago was not very good. The Argos will win games this year that they should lose. I just don't think it's going to be this one. I honestly think Calgary is kind of going to put a little bit of a whooping on them, if I'm being perfectly honest. If this is the last ride of the Calgary Stampeders, I think they're going to start things off very, very strongly and really make a statement here in week 1. So basically, if this number is under double digits for the Stamps, I'm laying the points. I'm taking Calgary minus probably anything up to 9.5. Now, maybe that's me being unfair to this Argos team and unfair to a guy that I just praised as potentially a top 5 quarterback in McLeod Bethel-Thompson, but this is a very complete Stampeders team. I expect them to come out and show it in week 1. Who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. I'm going to take Calgary 34-22 in this matchup over Toronto. So again, another number that's kind of around the mid-50s. That's kind of where I expect all of these games to finish, I'll be perfectly honest, but somewhere around the mid-50s is where I would expect this total to land. And the last game that we will look at is the Ottawa REDBLACKS in Edmonton taking on the newly named Elks. These are 2 teams that combined to win only 11 games in 2019. Ottawa only collected 3 of those. They were 3-15. 2 of those 3 wins did come on the road, and they were both against West Division opponents, but that's still only 2 wins or 3 wins in an 18-game season. Not very good. Scored only 312 points in 18 games, gave up 564. Spoilers, they missed the playoffs. What I do like about the REDBLACKS is this defense is coming in perpetually underrated. The expectation is this will be the worst defense in the CFL, and I genuinely think that this Ottawa defense is a little underrated. They've got multiple of 2019's top tacklers and pass rushers now under contract through free agency. So this is a team that understood that its defense was, in a word, dumpster fire. That's 2 words, but whatever. They knew they had to fix that, and they took steps to improve their ability to put pressure on the quarterback and to make the important tackles. I think Ottawa stepped up. But even this season, I think they're only going to go as far as their quarterback takes them. Now, last year they had bad quarterbacks. This year they have a good quarterback. They've got Matt Nichols. He's going to be the starting quarterback. This team's only going to go as far as Matt Nichols can take it. Is that going to be to a better record than they had last year? Well, I mean, they've got fewer games, but I don't necessarily know how many more games Ottawa wins this year, but I think they'll be at least more competitive. and the Edmonton Elks. And this is my dark horse team this year. I'm just going to spoil it for you right away. They were only 8-10 in 2019, 5-4 in their own building, which is good. 5-3 versus East opponents, which is all right. They were 406 points for, 400 points against. So they were very even money. And spoilers, I expect that trend to continue this year, to be perfectly honest. They were the number 4 seed in the West, so they got the crossover in the playoff format. So they did get that. They actually won a game in the playoffs, but lost to Hamilton in the East Finals. What I like about the Edmonton Elks is very easy. Top 3 quarterback in this league in Trevor Harris, who's hitting that TB12 method and looks like he's de-aged like 15 years like Benjamin Button. He looks fantastic. I think he is in line for an incredible year. They have diverse offensive talent. They've got great top-end offensive talent, especially at wide receiver, running it back with Greg Ellingson, and they have got a myriad of offensive talent on that team. Another team that I would say has an elite top 2 to 3 offensive line. You will notice that when I talked about what I like about this team, I said absolutely nothing about the defense. And that is not without good cause. This team is the ultimate glass cannon. Can you score more than the other guys? Can you not be stopped more than the other guys? This team is the only team in the CFL that does not currently have a top 30 tackler from 2019 on their roster. Despite the fact that Ottawa has improved in measurable areas where they needed to improve, this still feels like a hammer versus a nail. Like, it feels like Edmonton's the hammer and Ottawa's going to be the nail. But this early in the season, literally anything can happen. I'm going to be laying the points here on Edmonton, anything below 2 touchdowns. So if they give me a minus 13.5, I am actually going to take that because I do still think that number will cover. I'm going to take Edmonton 35, Ottawa 21 in this game. So once again, another mid-50. You got to be looking for those totals somewhere in the mid-50s. I think it's going to take the defenses in general a couple of weeks to gel together as a unit. I think that's where you're going to see the top-end offensive players mean that much more here as in the first few weeks. And I think that's really going to be the proverbial trump card for a number of these teams. So there you go, folks. Those are my picks for week 1. We'll go over them here with you one more time. I like Hamilton over Winnipeg. I like Saskatchewan over BC. I like Calgary over Toronto. And I like Edmonton over Ottawa. The spreads, I'm going to be taking Hamilton anywhere up to minus 6.5. I like the Lions plus 7 and above if you get a number like that. Calgary, I'm going to be laying any points below double digits, so 9.5 or below. And Edmonton, I'm going to be laying any points under 2 touchdowns. So I thought I'd cap the episode as something of a season preview by looking at some of the betting previews. Since we don't have any other betting lines, we can only really look at futures values, future bets, things that you could look into were you so inclined to do a little bit of the entertainment purposes only gambling. All the lines I'm about to give you come from Sports Interaction. So in terms of regular season wins, we're looking at the over-under totals for every team in terms of wins in the regular season, bearing in mind 14-game season, not 18 like normal. The Lions are at 5.5. Calgary is at 7.5. Edmonton also at 5.5. Hamilton at 9.5. Montreal at 6.5, Ottawa 3.5, Saskatchewan 8.5, Toronto 6.5, and Winnipeg 8.5. If you're looking for my particular leans on those as we sit right now, I'm looking at probably the over in the first 5 that I mentioned there. So Lions over 5.5, you get that at minus 118. The under is the same. Calgary over 7.5 wins at minus 135. You can grab the under at minus 105. Edmonton over 5.5. I love that bet. I'll probably be making that bet myself. The over there is minus 167. You can grab the under at plus money if you really think they're going to collapse. You can grab that at plus 120. Hamilton and Montreal over at 9.5 and 6.5 respectively. Both of those are at minus 118, and the under is the same value. Now, in the last 4 teams that I mentioned there, Ottawa, Saskatchewan, Toronto, and Winnipeg, I like 3 of those to be unders. Because, I mean, look, teams are winning, somebody's got to lose, right? Ottawa at 3.5. I still think it's an under. I think this is closer to a 3-11 team than I do that it's a 4-10 team. I'll be perfectly honest. Got nothing to do with Matt Nichols. That's just how I feel sitting here right now. And that under is actually at plus money at plus 110. I still think it stays under the 3.5. If you like the over, it's minus 154. It's a pretty high value. Saskatchewan, 8.5. This is an under for me as well. I don't think that they've got the same kind of team they rolled into with last year. 9 wins, just strikes me as a little too much. I like the under at minus 133. You can grab the over at minus 105. Toronto, 6.5 wins. This is an over for me. I think Toronto is a 500 team this year. I think they have the potential offensively and defensively to make that happen. The over is minus 133. You can grab the under if you don't agree with me at minus 105. And then you've got Winnipeg, 8.5. This is a firm under for me, and it's probably my second favorite pick that I can take on these over-unders. The under is minus 143, but if you really believe in them, if you think this could be a double-digit win team, the over, you can actually get at plus money right now at plus 102. I talked a little bit earlier about the CFL Most Outstanding Player and how Cody Fajardo for the Saskatchewan Roughriders was one of the frontrunners. He is, in fact, the frontrunner for Most Outstanding Player in 2021. You can grab him right now at plus 200 odds. Bo Levi Mitchell is right behind him at plus 300 odds. Then you got a couple of defensive players, Willie Jefferson and Simone Lawrence. You can grab each of them at plus 325. Now, with a bet like this, of course, all bets have action. You can bet on basically anybody. Mike Riley is plus 650 if you really believe in Mike Riley. Trevor Harris is not even on the board inside the top 7 or 8, but there would be action on him if you really believe in his ability to throw maybe 5,000 yards and a bunch of touchdowns. You might want to grab him because, look, you'd be getting better value on him than Mike Riley at plus 650. Might be something to consider. Most Outstanding Canadian, you've basically got a big 3 in these terms, and then everybody else is either plus 1,200 or worse. You've got Henok Muwamba at plus 150, Cameron Judge at plus 175, and then the aforementioned Andrew Harris at plus 220. Might be a little bit tougher for him if he's going to miss week 1, but look, at plus 220, there's value on him as being one of the game-breaking players in the CFL. Once again, all bets have action if you want to grab somebody else. Interesting for me to look at Lamar Durant, one of Mike Riley's wide receivers. You can get him at plus 1,200, and if that Lions offense goes off, like I think it might with an improved offensive line, Lamar Durant might be a great value play there for Most Outstanding Canadian. And then, of course, the 2021 Grey Cup odds, and this is what we will finish on. Keep an eye out on my Twitter, by the way, for a 9-unit, 9 teams, 9 units, a 9-unit card, a futures card, after week 3. I usually like to wait a couple of weeks, get the lay of the land, see if I can grab some extra value, and like I did last time, throw out a futures card after week 3. That was where I had the Riders, I think. Their odds had gone from like plus 600 to plus 1850 or something. This might have been a couple years ago to win the Grey Cup. And they went all the way to the Grey Cup final. I don't think they won, but they went all the way to the Grey Cup final. And I had tripled my odds. So just by waiting that couple of weeks, there's really a lot of value there to be found. But this is where the odds sit as of right now prior to the beginning of the season. Hamilton has the best odds at plus 294. Then you've got Saskatchewan at plus 460. Calgary at plus 496. Winnipeg at plus 504. I think that's a money hole. Toronto at plus 619. Edmonton at plus 800. Might be worth taking a look at. BC at plus 900. Montreal was also at plus 900. And then you've got Ottawa obviously bringing up the rear at plus 1,200. All of that information can be found once again on Sports Interaction. They're not sponsoring me. That's just where I go for these lines. And look, there's plenty of action to be found there. If you agree with what I'm talking about, if you don't agree with what I'm talking about, one way or the other, there's some money to be made. There you have it, folks. That's everything I can give you on week 1. My fantasy lineup, my picks for the games, some futures betting conversation. Again, entertainment purposes only. That's it for me, Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, and thank God we've got the Canadian game, the better game, Canadian football, back on our TV screens. You gotta love it.